Today on BRStv Investigates, we've conducted a series of skimmer tests in an artificial environment, but this time we're experimenting on our very own 750XXL to find out if more air creates a wetter skim, and then in our next experiment, we finally attempt to answer which air draw setting will pull out more organics, wetter or drier skimmate. All that's coming up. Hi, I'm Randy with this Friday's BRStv Investigates, where we put popular reefing gear, theories, and methods to the test by experimenting on our own tanks so you don't have to experiment on yours. And in today's experiment, we determine if the protein skimmer air draw performance results we've been testing in the BRS lab tanks will produce similar results on our very own reef tank, the BRS 750XXL. So to get right to it, over the last handful of protein skimmer testing experiments, we've developed a pretty good picture into how air draw can not only vary from skimmer pump to skimmer pump, or how air draw changes with different skimmer design types, but we've also learned that we can use air draw to change the type of skimmate foam that we can achieve with our skimmers. If you're like many other reefers, including myself, until now we really haven't given air draw rates much of a second thought. Yet, where we weren't using air draw adjustments before to help dial in our skimmer's performance, now that we are more informed on what changing the airflow inside the skimmer is capable of achieving, we can use that information to optimize our skimmer performance. With that in mind, there's really only two questions left hanging out there that we need to answer, which are, does more air equal a wetter skim on a real-world reef tank like the 750XXL? And is more airflow and higher air velocity better at removing organics from our tanks? Today we answer that first question using our Regal 200 EXT recirculating skimmer that's already on our BRS 750XXL. And then in the next experiment, we're going to see just how much organics are removed by using a dry, wet, or in-between airflow setting to answer that second question. So let's get started with today's results. Today's experiment will be a pretty quick visual comparison where we put our 200 EXT skimmer on this tank to the test by monitoring the type of skimmate produced when we set the recirculating Varios 4 skimmer air pump to the lowest, middle, and highest settings of 1, 3, and 5 speeds. Just a reminder, these settings should be around 440, 810, and 1080 liters per hour air draw, respectively. In order to do that, we set the pump speed, then adjusted the water height level inside the skimmer and monitored its performance for 24 hours, where we took a snapshot of the skimmer's skimmate production after the first hour at those air draw speeds, and then a second snapshot after 24 hours to see what type of skimmate each setting was able to achieve, and here's what we found out. In the first hour of our recirculating skimmer set to the lowest air draw speed setting of 1, we see the low velocity of the airflow creates more time for the foam head to develop, and as such, there's a pretty thick and dry skimmate. After about 24 hours, there's still a dry foam in the neck with the organics that have collected along the neck walls, and some of it did push up and spill over into the collection cup. The waste collected in the cup looks to be very dark and organically rich, and if we were actively adjusting the water height in the skimmer body, we probably would have seen even more of that dark, thick skimmate in the cup and less within the skimmer neck. Looking at the first hour of the skimmer set to a speed setting of 3, we can already see that there's an increased velocity in the air pushing up into the neck and out of the skimmer top. The bubbles at the top surface of the skimmate foam are popping more rapidly than the first airflow setting 1, and the entire foam head is almost cresting the skimmer neck and into the collection cup. At the end of the test, near the 24-hour mark, we can see that there is definitely more organics that made it into the cup, which looks to be very dark and still collecting when the test ended. For the next test, we set the recirculating air pump speed to the max setting of 5, and within that first hour of skimming, the amount of air leaving the skimmer is so fast that already there's wet skimmate spilling over into the collection cup, where by the end of the first hour, there's already some water skim developing. Looking at this setting 24 hours later, nearly half of the collection cup is full, and the consistency looks like a dark tea color that you can see through into the skimmer neck. So what we're seeing here is directly in line with what we saw in the BRS lab skimmer testing experiments, where there are clear lines between the dry and wet skimmate that we're capable of achieving by simply changing the air draw speed of the pump. But we're not done yet. Much like you, we want to know which one, drier or wetter skim, will perform the best at removing not just water, but at removing the most organics. Okay, so rating today's question, does more air equal wetter skim on a real-world reef tank like the 750 XXL? I think anyone looking at the results we saw today would overwhelmingly vote for a 10 out of 10 on the Reef certainty scale that yes, more air and higher air velocity being injected into the skimmer will absolutely produce a much wetter skimmate. But does that mean it's better than a drier skimmate? We're learning how to utilize the available tools where now we're able to make smarter, more informed decisions on how to adjust our skimmers for a dry or wet skim, but what's not been answered is whether one is better than the other. In our next experiment, we set out to test that very question by gathering skimmate that each of these 3 air draw settings collect in a 24-hour period, and then compare them against each other as to which one is able to remove the most organic content for our 750 XXL tank's specific bioload and feeding habits, where by the end of that test, you should be able to use these tools and discussion to choose and tune your skimmer to an option that best suits your very own tank. Although we're learning even more about skimmers than before, they're certainly not the only way to remove organics from your tank. So after you get your skimmer tuning right, what's next? Actually, filter socks are definitely a viable option that we tested in this video, and I can guarantee you most are using them wrong, but find out for yourself.